Well, folks, we have arrived. This is the end of Avataro Sentai Donbrothers, episode 50, the big grand finale. And I gotta say, this episode got me choked up watching because I didn't want to say goodbye to these characters. I've been watching episode 1 ever since it aired and been reviewing the show ever since it aired, and to say goodbye to these characters was kind of tugging at the heartstrings. I know they'll be back in the Versus movie, but to see them go, it only seems like yesterday that episode 1 aired and I put out my review for it. But let's talk about the finale, let's recap it, let's discuss it, let's review it, and then I'll give my overall thoughts at the end or near the end of the video. So let's get into it and talk about Avataro Sentai Donbrothers episode 50. So the episode starts out much like the very first episode, with Haruka getting an award for her manga, but in this episode you see her turning the series of Avataro Sentai Donbrothers and the adventures she's had along the way in the show into a manga series with the first 2 volumes out now. And she's getting the reward, and she says she wishes everyone could be here, or she's glad that everyone could be here, but someone's missing, and that someone is Taro. And then we flash back to 2 months earlier, and we sort of get this leading up to the events of her getting the manga reward, or manga award, and you see Taro sort of still going through this depressive slump. And we find out that he's losing his memories, and he's going to forget about all his friends and all the adventures he's made along the way, because basically his goal has been fulfilled. He's done everything he needed. I mean, the Noto have become his friends, Jiro has become his successor and found himself. Everything needs to be done, so now Taro is basically going to reset himself and forget that everything ever happened that he's been through. And it's kind of a sad moment, because in the episode you sort of see him sort of talking to everyone, asking if they regret being Donbrothers, and a lot of them say no. They say they wouldn't miss it for the world, and they sort of have their own goals and reasons for becoming Donbrothers, and that's sort of their striving force to move forward in the future. Like you have Inuzuka, who gets dumped by Natsumi in this episode, and Inuzuka says, hey, I'll fight for people who are in love, and I'll fight for love. And then you've got Kijino, who says he'll keep living so he can protect others. And even though he views it as fighting for himself, he still has that goal in mind. So the people that Momotaro has met along the way have sort of met these resolves as they move forward in this finale. Now, also in the episode, you have the brand new Noto, sort of the inspectors, the higher-ups, the final bosses, you could say, in this episode, because they are sort of the big bads that you meet in this show and sort of the final villains. And I'm sure that's going to be very controversial for a lot of people, where a lot of people are expecting some big final boss in this show, but no, they're basically not the council of the Noto, but someone who sort of work under them. And that is, I believe, Sonoya and Sonona, I believe. And I liked them. I thought they were pretty cool from what we saw. Like, they seemed dangerous from that, like, couple of episodes we've seen them in. They seemed very dangerous, as they were easily able to kill frickin' Sonoshi and his gang and basically take away their powers and use them for themselves. And that showed how much of a intimidating force they were. So, being the, Inoue series, people did die in this episode, but it wasn't a hero. So that's something. But like I said, in this episode, you've sort of got the, like, Momotaro's, like, friends trying to make him remember. There's this scene where he's sort of, it's when you kind of find out that he's forgetting everyone. He's having this nice scene where he's eating, onigiri with Jin in the jail dimension, and he has this scene where he's taking a bite out of him, and he's like, who are you? And he forgets who he is, and it's like a really sad moment that he forgets who his own father is. But then there's like another moment where they all take frickin' Taro out for Odin, and you have this scene where Sonoi is sort of whispering in his ear saying, this is such and such, they do this, they do that, and Taro's saying these nice things about him. And then when it gets to Inuzuka, I believe is it Inuzuka or Saru brother? He forgets who they are, and then his memories are gone, which is a really sad scene to see him forget. But then in the episode, you also have this big battle at the quarry between Sonoya and Sonona, between all the Don brothers and the Noto trio, and it's a really cool fight scene where you see all this awesome battle between them, and even Don Murasame gets involved, where Don Murasame realizes that, hey, I'm gonna fight for myself, and because I don't like you guys, and he's like, right, mother, and she's like, you do you, son. So we've got that going on with Don Murasame, where Don Murasame is now one of the good guys now, which they already were, but now they're sort of solidifying themselves in the finale to be part of the Don brothers, which was pretty freaking cool, I will say that. So Taro's losing his memories. He stumbles into the cafe and Kaito hands him an envelope, and Taro starts reading the manga pages of Haruka's upcoming manga based on the Don brothers, and they're sort of scenes redrawn from the show, and we get some clips of them, like when he meets Haruka and the scene where he sits with Sonoe under the moon, and they talk about the moon being a liar, I believe, or the moon isn't a liar, that saying, and like a bunch of other scenes we see in this episode as well, and it's a really nice scene. And as they're sort of getting the butt kicked, you have this scene where Taro joins in, he comes in, he saves the day. We get a 10 Don brother roll call where everyone does a roll call, including Murasame. Murasame joins in, and then there's this one scene where when it's up to Taro, he pauses for a while, but then he remembers who he is, and he goes in and he delivers the final blow to the Noto villains and destroys them. But Taro is also destroyed in the explosion as well, and that's the last time we ever see of him. And then it jumps forward into the future, and that's when Haruka accepts her manga award. But we also get this montage of everyone sort of doing their own thing. You have Inuzuka and Sononi on the run. You have sort of when Kichino's moving out, Natsumi bumps into him and she says, hey, do you want to keep living the dream? So that means that Kichino got a happy ending, which I was not expecting that. I thought Kichino would get the sad ending in this show, but no, he gets the live his dream out with Natsumi, who was Miho, but they had all those memories together. So he gets a nice ending. That's cool. You have sort of Saru brother just walking through the snow and doing a haiku. So that's really nice. And like I said, everyone gets a nice little ending in this episode. And then you have sort of the montage where Haruka's sort of doing her manga scenes. You've sort of got Sonaza pestering her on Skype, and then you hear the doorbell ring, and then she answers it, and then it's Taro, and Taro's wearing white, which they sort of imply what frickin' Kaito brings up, saying Taro's suit goes from red to white, which is really interesting because there's been a lot of speculation that a lot of people were speculating that Taro would show up as Don Brother White or Taro White or something like that in the show, and that's kind of what the suit turns out to be. Of what he's wearing as his delivery, it's all white, and he looks at Haruka and says what he says in their first meeting, saying, looks like we made a bond, and he smiles, and that's where the show ends. So that's pretty much my recap, discussion, review, what do you want to call it, of Don Brothers episode 50. And I gotta say, overall, I really, really love this episode, and overall, I really, really love this series. I've mentioned this a lot in my reviews and on social media, but this is the first Sentai I've watched since it premiered to when it ended, week to week, and I didn't miss an episode. And that was the first time I've ever done something with a Super Sentai series, where other series, I tried to watch when it premiered, Ryu Soldier and stuff like that, and Zenkaija, but then I fall off and I stop watching it, and then I just binge watch it later down the line, and even coming back to it, I struggle to watch it. But Don Brothers, something about it pulled me towards it and pulled me in, and I just wanted to keep watching it week to week. And I was worried that I would fall off watching Don Brothers, I would lose interest, but I didn't. I stuck with it through and through each week, which is really surprising for me. But this show was like great to watch. And I know there's been a lot of controversial opinions about Donbrothers. A lot of haters have come out of the woodwork where people got upset that there was no main big bad, there was no story, and I understand where they're coming from. But Donbrothers has shown one thing is you don't need this story between good and evil. You don't need this story with a big bad and a final boss like every other Sentai has done. Donbrothers was about the characters. It was about the journey. It was about the bonds that these characters formed together and the adventures they went on, or the journey they went on from start to finish. And as you sort of kept watching with these characters, you sort of formed a bond with them. And I feel like that's what they were aiming for with what Taro says, saying, looks like we formed a bond now. And it looks like us as the audience did form a bond with these characters. Like, I love these characters. I like the Donbrothers. I like the Noto. I liked even the side characters that would show up from time to time. These guys were a lot of fun, and I know there was some stuff that went unanswered, like Kaito Black and probably some Juto plotline threads hanging in the air that was left unanswered, but to be honest, that doesn't bother me now that I've watched the finale. I thought it would, but honestly it doesn't, because I feel like if they were going to answer Kaito Black, they would have done it ages ago, but I feel like the gimmick with Kaito Black was sort of established ages ago back in like the clip show where like he's sort of meant to be this really cool hero that's got this secret identity, and I'm sure we'll get some kind of joke about Kaito and Kaito Black in the Versus movie. You never know. But either way, Donbrothers, like I said, the first Sentai series I watched weekly from start to finish, and I loved it. And I'm definitely going to be watching and reviewing King Oja when that premieres next week, so stay tuned for that. I'm definitely going to give my thoughts on that series as it airs. Hopefully I can watch it week to week like I did with Donbrothers, but we'll see what happens. But Donbrothers, probably one of my favorite Super Sentai series in more recent years. I haven't seen many Super Sentai series, so I know I probably can't judge, but Donbrothers is probably my favorite series that I've seen so far. And like I said, I've only seen a handful of Super Sentai from different eras, from start to finish, but Donbrothers is probably one of my favorites, and maybe this is one that I'm going to recommend to friends who don't watch Super Sentai or they don't follow Toku. I might recommend it to them, or even people who I know, who I talk to in different communities who fell off watching Super Sentai. I might recommend it to them and see if they like it. But Donbrothers, it's sad to see it go, but I hope we see these characters again in the nearby future, and I can't wait to see them again. And I want to thank all of you guys who watched my Donbrothers reviews. If you stuck with me from the very beginning, that is much appreciated. I love you for it. And if you were just joining like halfway through the series, or even now, thank you for watching this review. I'm wondering if people are going to go back and watch my Donbrothers reviews from start to finish. That should be interesting. But yeah, Donbrothers, an amazing series, and it's sad to see it go. But with that said, I think I'm going to bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out, take care, bye.